Voting begins this Sunday in Hong Kong's patriots-only Legislative Council election. Here's a look at the key issues people in the city will consider when they cast their ballots. For decades, mass protests in Hong Kong have demanded universal suffrage. The city's mini-constitution, or the Basic Law, says the ultimate aim is to have the territory's leader and legislature elected by popular vote. Beijing's latest overhaul of the electoral system may have snuffed out that hope. 3 candidates running for seats in the LegCo say they will continue to push for universal suffrage. Hong Kong's housing crisis has been blamed as one of the key issues that sparked the 2019 anti-government protests. Officials say anger boiled over because most residents do not have a decent place to live or may never be able to afford their own homes. This has forced many to pay top dollar for the smallest living spaces in the city, or worse, to live on the streets. The number of people facing poverty in Hong Kong rose sharply last year to more than 1.6 million. Almost a quarter of the city's population is living below the poverty line. Facing a bleak future, reports say more than 90,000 residents left Hong Kong over the last year. Young people face depressed wages, job insecurity and competition from mainland Chinese talent. The brain drain accelerated after Beijing imposed its controversial national security law in the city. More young families are also seeking a fresh start elsewhere. Many say they do not want their children to be taught by the city's revamped patriotic and national education curriculum. The coronavirus pandemic has added to Hong Kong's political woes. The city, like China, has adopted a zero-COVID approach. Despite strong calls to ease border restrictions, the Hong Kong government has prioritized reopening to the mainland over the rest of the world. And that has left the territory isolated as other countries lift border restrictions for the vaccinated. Hong Kong's young people who led protests 2 years ago have repeatedly called for more say in the city's political development. Several first-time candidates are much younger than those who ran in previous elections. But with major opposition parties staying out of these polls, critics say they see little reason to vote. And Dr. Lim Tai Wei, Senior Research Fellow at the National University of Singapore, joins us live. Dr. Lim, it's not guaranteed, of course, but a LegCo elected under this new electoral system likely to have a significantly large proportion of pro-government voices. How do you see this impacting the functioning of the Hong Kong government?
Well, the Hong Kong government, as well as the central government, have intended for this election to show basically 3 kind of outcomes. The first one is the ability to hold the election without experiencing a lot of political turbulence. And the second one is to put in place patriotic candidates, patriotic in accordance with their criteria, in order to push forward certain initiatives that includes Northern Metropolis, greater integration into the Greater Bay Area GBA projects, and also other kinds of infrastructure projects. And perhaps the third symbolism that they hope to achieve is that they want to sort of start a greater political convergence with the mainland, starting from now by having more patriotic candidates.
Now, the many candidates that have come forward have also vowed to resolve Hong Kong's housing crisis. Now, this is not a new issue, but how big of an issue is it for the voters today?
It was the campaign promise that was made by the chief executive when she ran for the position of CE, chief executive, and she intends to sort of contribute to making her campaign promise a reality. And therefore, she has looked at the possibility of the Northern Metropolis project, in which there will be 350,000 apartments capacity that will be built for the Hong Kong people as part of the efforts to resolve the housing issue. She is also working with the tycoon elites within Hong Kong, who have been more forthcoming in donating land to the government in order to reach the goal of building more housing for the Hong Kong people, in order to stave off the increasing prices. Hong Kong property prices are already the most expensive in the world. It is seen, especially by the central government, as an explosive issue that had contributed to a political turbulence before the onset or implementation of the national security law.
Dr. Lim, you mentioned in your earlier answer that political convergence with mainland China is one of the main reasons for electoral reform in Hong Kong. Now, before we cross to 90,000 leaving the city in the last year alone, and a study earlier this year showed a quarter of under 35s educated at university all want to leave Hong Kong. Now, the leaders of the city, surely they are concerned at this quite significant brain drain.
In fact, the leaders of Hong Kong are indeed concerned, and they have asked and made public pleas with Hong Kong people to stay on to contribute to Hong Kong's future. But at the same time, the political elites in Hong Kong also understand that Hong Kong people have their own decisions to make at different stages of their lives. And therefore, there are certain sections of the population that may not be used to the incoming new system that will be in place in Hong Kong. And so they have therefore migrated with existing passports or migrated to countries in which they have the BNO passports. And in that sense, what we may see in the near future is the emergence of two Hong Kongs. The Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of China, and also a diasporic community of Hong Kongers that are trying to look for their own destiny elsewhere in other parts of the world. And they may form their own networks overseas in that sense.
And observers say they're expecting a low voter turnout. The government, though, doesn't seem too concerned about this.
The government's priority is to put in place a system that is stable from their perspective. Both the Hong Kong authorities as well as the central government is to get economic development going, particularly since there are multiple challenges at the moment with the coronavirus, particularly with Omicron, which is looming overhead, and also to get projects that have been stalled in the past decade going again, particularly integration into the Greater Bay Area region, in which the central government has envisioned Hong Kong to be the major overseas renminbi trading center in the world, and also for Hong Kong to become the financial hub of the Greater Bay Area region to complement Guangzhou as a manufacturing sector and Shenzhen as the unofficial Silicon Valley of China.
Oh, thanks for that, Dr. Lim Tai Wei, Senior Research Fellow at the National University of Singapore.